Hi, and welcome to Transparent with Tina. I am Tina Marx, your host. Today I have a very interesting guest. He is a transformational speaker, senior consultant, workshop facilitator, and author. Please welcome Jeffon Seely. Welcome, Jeffon.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
And it's a pleasure to actually meet you because I don't know if you know this. I think I told you when we were on the phone, I saw you speak at the spiritual center that I go to in Palm Desert. And I was so taken with you, and I really wanted to stay after and introduce myself. And I don't remember, how many months ago was that? Do you remember?
Oh man, time is blending together right now.
Yeah.
But I want to say probably 7 months ago.
Probably, yeah, exactly. But seriously, I've never had a speaker that I was going, maybe I should stay after, and I would have if I didn't have a prior commitment. And then the way the universe works, and synchronicity, Jeff, who is the head of my production, said, this might be somebody you want to interview. And I'm like, of course, thank you. So thank you so much for being here. So why don't we just let's start at the beginning, your story. Now you were raised in Utah, correct?
I was. There's usually a question that follows after I tell people I was raised in Utah.
Yeah, what's that question?
Well, I sometimes tease and I'm like, I know what everybody's going to ask. And I invite the audience to say,
what are you
and
Mormon?
Usually that's the question. But There was one time that somebody said, do you ski? And I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. But yeah, so
you assume everybody's Mormon in Utah.
Well, in growing up, I had the opportunity to be raised in the Mormon tradition. And my father is African-American. My mother was adopted from Scotland by my grandparents who were on a building mission there. And so I just happened to begin my journey in Utah. And it was very, very unique, particularly where I was raised as one of the only kids in the community who had a little bit different tint of skin than other kids in that area. And my sister and I were two of the kids who didn't quite look the same. And growing up and internalizing a variety of things based upon how the external world told me that how I was supposed to be or who I was or what was possible for my life. And a lot of that wasn't necessarily aligning with the potential that I know was within me. But as a young boy, not knowing how to internalize that, I often turned to the outside world who didn't have my best judgment or my best future path in mind and internalize that. And that helped to shape the way that I saw myself at that time, which was, maybe I'm not as valuable as other people. Maybe I'm not as worthy as other people. Maybe I don't belong as other people. And
were you bullied?
It wasn't necessarily bullied in a sense where it's like, oh, go, attack this person. It was Yeah, it was this is something that's very important in this time. It's, there's these subtle, indirect, passive actions of discrimination or prejudice that maybe individuals who are doing it don't necessarily see what's taking place, but it plants seeds within the mind of individuals who have yet to actually understand how to control or dictate their inner world or inner garden. And so that appeared in the form of racial slurs, name calling, not being invited to certain places because people thought that, I was going to steal something, or friends not being able to come to my house, or even, the reason why I left the Mormon church. And this is not true for all Mormons at all. But I walked in a Sunday school classroom when I was 12 and maybe 11, and it said, no N words allowed. And not knowing how to internalize it, I just and so a lot of those type of things that were very subtle, but helped to build the foundation that I was standing on within myself. And at times, I think we both can agree that if we're unwilling to begin to recognize that inner foundation, it can really start to dictate and control how we show up in the world. Absolutely. And that was my reality for a while.
Absolutely. And I think most people, I mean, see, I was like the opposite. I was raised with affluence, I had everything I wanted monetarily. Okay. But I had a father that told me that nothing was ever good enough. So my message was I wasn't worthy. So I internalized that. And I mean, I found metaphysics when I was 35, seriously. And when people look at me now, they go, there's no way you were ever insecure. I'm like, well, you didn't know me back then. You didn't, you know, and I put on this wall, right? Because when you feel that way and you feel inferior and you feel scared and you feel lonely, you don't want anybody else to see that. So I, you know, came out with this big persona. And to this day, everybody that, like, I have clients that meet me this way, and when they meet me in person, they go, I thought you were like 6 feet tall. But you know, it's a survival skill, right? But when did you first know, like, did you ever have that flicker of, like, I mean, you were raised in the Mormon church, but when did you have that knowingness, that connectedness, you know, that you wanted to build on? Where's that aha moment for you that went, I want to be a teacher, I want to spread this message, I want to make a difference in the world, and really embrace yourself and you know what your purpose was to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I know that growing up, when all of those things would take place, both my grandmother and my mother would always remind me that I could be anybody that I wanted to be, and somebody's opinion of me didn't have to determine my worth, which is something that all of us could recognize. And you know, growing up and being in that particular environment till I was 12, and I stopped going to the church because my grandma allowed me to make that decision. I thought I was grown, but I actually really wasn't. I always would interpret a variety of different religious passages and see them from a different perspective, not really knowing that I was seeing it from a different perspective. And I tried to find this commonality, and a lot of the things that I was learning didn't add up. And it wasn't until I was in college in Seattle, one of my father's friends was like this, I do like this spiritual guy, you know, and that's somebody who's like, you know, there's the divine is everywhere present, or there's no spot where God is not, or everything is happening for your highest and best good. And I remember pointing back at my experience at my mom at that time, who was struggling with drugs and addiction, my father, who I just rekindled the relationship with him, my grandparents who just passed away, my little sisters who were still in Utah with nobody around them to uphold them or remind them how incredible and beautiful they are. And I thought I made a good point as to why everything he was saying was complete BS. And he gave me a book. And, you know, Tina, books are quite powerful once you decide to open them. I have many books that I've yet to open, but when you do that magical thing, like opening and then start looking at the words, in that process, this book that he provided me really spoke at something that was aligning with my spirit. And that was this concept of Christ consciousness. And it was at that time that like a doorway opened in my mind, and I expanded past the version of myself, and I could never go back. And since then, I've just been unfolding.
What was the book?
So the book was by this author named Joseph Brenner, and it's called The Way to the Kingdom.
Interesting. So that just resonated with you. So for me, my mother raised me spiritual. She went to Science of Mind. Way back then. She's passed on since then. And so if I didn't have that kind of beginning, because like I said, my father, was the total opposite, and I couldn't do anything right. And, when I have a book, and I write in my book, Fear versus Faith. It's like my father was the fear, my mom was the faith. My mom always told me I could do anything I wanted. So it's really up to you. When you get ignited with the thought, and it really resonates within you, it's so important. I think our viewers should really, really understand that. It's something that speaks to you, no matter if it makes sense or it doesn't, because at first it didn't make any sense to you, like, my family's suffering, if that was true, because I think a lot of people come from that point of view. If that was true, if there was a God, there wouldn't be so much disharmony in the world, or war, starvation, or everything else. Right?
Yeah.
What would you say to somebody that said that? Well, Jeffon, if there really is a God, then why would people be suffering the way they do?
And that's a question that I often grapple with and take with me into meditation. And the perspective that I have, or what seems to be true to me, is honoring or recognizing that there is one essence and energy that enables everything to be, whether we're talking about the sun that is shining, the earth that is spinning, the stars that are illuminating, you and I who are breathing, existing, moving, our hearts that are beating, cells dividing, atoms thriving. There is an energy or essence that is enabling all of those things to exist.
Yes.
And whatever you call it, I don't know how to encompass it into a few words, but it's something that is there. And if we can move towards that recognition of quote unquote, the one, God, the infinite, divine intelligence, suddenly we start recognizing that it's within all things. Now you can honor and recognize that one essence and energy within all things without discounting or spiritually bypassing the suffering that is happening in the world. You can still see that, and you can use your energy to go and try to alleviate that. You can use your energy to alleviate your own suffering. But it's not just like hiding under this cocoon or this umbrella or this blanket of spirituality, afraid to look out at the world or to quickly justify, well, God is there too. Yes, of course. But we have to begin to put in motion the energy that enables us to simply be and recognize that even in the apparent absence of God, God is there. Or
Absolutely.
The divine is there.
And you know, it took me a long time to I think probably up until this year, like solidify. I had a friend of mine years ago said, Tina, God is everything or God is nothing. I'm like, what does that mean? And then I understood, because like when everything's going well, oh, there is a God, right? And then when things would go really dark, it's like, you know, your faith, you kind of pull your faith back, hand it over, pull it back, hand it over, pull it back. And now it's like, it's all about trusting. And in fact, I had a client today and we were talking about this very thing. And one thing that I've learned, and I want to know if you kind of agree with this or you don't, once you hand over your problem to the universe, what I've learned recently is that you don't keep checking on it, because it says to the universe that you don't trust the universe to do its job. It's like, and you're not attached to an outcome. It's like, it will come in its time. You can't be attached to a timeline or the way it's going to come to fruition. If you keep praying about it, then it's saying to the universe that you don't really believe that it's going to be taken care of.
Yeah, that's a really great thought. My mentor has a saying that's like committed detachment. So imagine if we are planting a garden, and of course we put in these tomatoes or whatever. We know that given time and given energy and given our work towards it, a tomato plant will occur. Now, can you be committed to the process of allowing that tomato plant to flourish by doing what you need to do, but also detached from that end result, knowing that, you know, if I move here intentionally, if I'm committed and dedicated to being my best self, and I have this vision in mind, sure, it may unfold this way, but I'm not fully attached to that, because attachment often leads to a doorway that opens that can invite in suffering if we fail to meet those expectations. But you can be committed in the process right now, in the present
moment. If it
moment.
doesn't show up exactly the way you had envisioned or were expecting, then you're going to be disappointed. And so I get that. Okay. So you got this book when you were, how old did you say when you read the book?
I was about 20 years old, 19,
20 years
20.
old. So how did that change your life? How did you change the direction of your life at that point?
Yeah, well, all of a sudden it's like I started going within, and I started really beginning to recognize the self-image that I've created, my internal world. I started being an astronaut of inner space instead of just looking out here and seeing what's happening in the external world. And that led me down a process of meditation. It led me down a process of really just being able to tune into these like inner whispers or inner calling within myself that unfolded in terms of writing. And I was going to school to complete my degree in accounting during that time, and just started opening my mind to different paths and different avenues. It transformed everything. And that has been like the single most greatest awakening that I've had in my experience. And everything is built upon that initial door that was opened within my mind.
Right. So one thing led to the next, and you know, we hear so much about meditation. And like I said, I have clients, I have friends that say, I can't do it. You know, and when I hear that, and I used to be very resistant to, and what I have found, whenever I'm really resistant towards something, it's like the universe's way of saying, you need this the most. So if I'm really resistant, and you know what, it does seem to be this the space where you really can connect, slow down your conscious mind from racing, because we're in such a busy world, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if you don't do this once a day to like kind of reconnect to your intuition, to your all knowingness, because I think I've read enough about you that I believe we have all the answers inside. So when somebody says to me, I don't know, I'll say, well, if you did know, what would that be? And then it's amazing, you'll actually get an answer,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because people's first, it's because they're up here, they're not here, right? So they're answering from their head, which is filled with judgment. And, you know, we are all really, you know, really hard on ourselves. And
Mm-hmm.
what do you feel about that? What do you feel about people that are really judgmental on themselves? Do you think that self-criticism does any good at all?
I like to try to say, I have to catch myself when I start spiraling into a free fall, so to say, of negativity or blame or shame or guilt. And at times when I've been willing to course correct what's happening within myself, it allows me to shift the trajectory of how I'm showing up in the world. However, I do not feel that continuously to beat yourself up over something that you did or did not do, for myself, that has not proven to be beneficial at all.
Right.
And I have to catch myself, because it's very easy to be critical on yourself and pinpoint the areas that you may have come up short. And it takes real discipline within yourself to recognize, yes, okay, what can I learn from this, and then how can I go forward in this moment on and maximize the experience or the tools or the gifts that seeming difficulty or curse brought my way. It may have been a blessing.
So let me ask you, I want to ask you how you do self-correct, because, you know, just so you know, I think everybody falls into it. I fell into it last week, and
I fall into it.
what happened? You know, it doesn't, you know, I don't care how long you've been practicing this or working on yourself. We're all human beings. We all fall into it. But, you know, we all, you know, should have some tools to get out of it, because if you don't have tools, that could take, you know, days, weeks, months, you know, out of your life. And I've experienced that myself. So
Yeah.
how do you, once you're aware and you're like, oh man, I'm really like off in a ditch here, and I just got really low vibration, and I'm beating up myself, and I'm not having any gratitude, what are the tools that you use for yourself to get out of that space?
Okay, so we got 3 more hours right now. I'm joking. So yes, so okay, there's a handful of things, and I'll share some that may seem simplistic but are very profound. I found in my experience that I can only begin to course correct myself if I am willing to recognize that I am in the present moment. Now, if I am not in the present moment, that means that I'm probably stuck in the past or stuck in some visioning of the future.
Yeah.
And both of those things pull me, or at least disconnect me from what is happening right now. Not saying that we can't reflect or look forward to. It's just we have to realize that we're living right now. So if I am willing to take those steps to begin to recognize, okay, I'm here, I'm doing this, how can I catching yourselves, 50% of the thing. And then secondly, when I am there are a few natural occurring phenomenons that begin to occur in the present moment that any human being can connect to as long as we are living and walking upon this earth. The first one is our breath. We breathe roughly 25,000 times a day, and most of us are unaware of even 5 breaths. So when you catch yourself spiraling in this downward trajectory, you can suddenly realize you're doing it, be mindful of a couple breaths. That will bring your awareness back into your body. If that does not do it, you can put your hand on your heart. That's another naturally occurring phenomenon that happens 100,000 times a day. And most of us, like you said, Tina, are so busy, we're not even aware that our heart is beating, let alone feeling our heartbeat. And those things will bring you back into the moment.
Yes.
And then from there, you can choose these 4 paintbrushes that we have to color our reality. The first one has to do with our thoughts. You are the only one who can think your thoughts for you. So if you're thinking a negative thought, you have the power, you have the ability as the observer in your life to begin to choose a more empowering thought. You can do it. Second, your emotions. Thoughts tend to fuel feelings and emotions. So if you begin to think on a positive thought trajectory, even if it doesn't necessarily align at that moment, it starts to create this synergy of feelings and emotions that you can tap into. And then with those two things, you then can start moving towards choices, which is something that only you can commit to. And then finally, you can follow it up with action. So breath, heartbeat, thoughts, emotions, choices, actions, all things that are available to you, all things that happen in this present moment of now. And if we're willing to do that, I mean, we're coloring the canvas of our life.
So your thoughts dictate your emotions dictate your behaviors, and your behaviors become your reality, is what you're saying.
Right.
So it all starts with your thoughts.
And it all starts being in this moment, recognizing that you are the one literally steering your life forward. Even if you say it's them or what I did back here or this speed bump that's up here,
Right.
You're the driver.
And you know what I heard, and I do find this very true. If you're looking too far behind you, you're going to be filled with regret. And if you're looking too far ahead of you, you're going to feel anxious. So you don't want to feel any of those, right? So, okay, so moving forward. So you have so many things that you're doing. You're a transformational speaker. You're an author. You're a senior consultant. I know you work with a lot of millennials. Where do we start? What are you doing? You've done 4 books, right? Written 4 books?
I have 2 books right now. I guess I've kind of like been in other books, but 2 main ones that I've wrote myself. Yes.
And your latest one is what?
The Book of Essence, which is poems of inspiration, stories of empowerment, and the key that unlocks the greatest you.
Yes, and I remember when I saw you speak that you really just have that flair to you just draw people in. So did that come naturally to you? Is that just one of your gifts? You know, it just doesn't flow from you? Is it just channeled through you, the poetry part?
It feels very natural. You know, when I was very young, my grandpa would always say, they would call me JJ for Jeffon Jr. And he would say, everybody loves JJ. And that was something that was in my mind that as I started building my just being more authentic and being more real in my life, it just seems so natural. It just feels right.
Yeah. So, so where can they find those books? Are they on Amazon?
On Amazon. I do believe that I'm the only Jeffon Seely in the world. So if you type in Jeffon Seely, you'll find me.
An amazing name. And so tell us about because you speak all over the world, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So who hires you? Who do you speak to? Do you speak to younger audiences, middle-aged, CEOs? Who do you speak to?
Well, it all started with me getting the courage necessary to reach out to Centers for Spiritual Living and Unity churches about 5 years ago when I lived in Atlanta. And that was I'm not a pastor, I'm not a reverend or anything. And people gave me opportunities, and then I continued to use those to get more opportunities. And then over the course of maybe the past 3 years, it's really morphed and evolved into a lot of work that I do with government agencies, whether it's the Army or the Air Force, NASA, the Bureau of Reclamation, a variety of government agencies and academic institutions and Fortune 500 organizations, primarily centered on executive leadership teams and employees, helping them recognize the importance of not only 21st century leadership, but also the importance of creating an inclusive organization in order to move forward into this current time that we're in.
And I was reading also, so a lot of these corporations have millennials for employees, right? And so you help them, dialogue better, help them understand each other better?
Yeah, so the way that I call it is I simply allow them to start bridging generational differences.
Thank you.
Yeah, and
that's our way of putting it.
Yeah, because right now I think it's 2020, so roughly 50% of the American workforce are millennials, 7% are Gen Z, which is the generation younger than millennials.
That's my son.
That we're not going away, and the younger generation will continue to get older. And so finding ways to bridge the differences that exist between us, allowing them to be the creative tension necessary for us to step forward individually, collectively, and within an organization, instead of allowing those differences to create barriers that prevent us from moving forward, is something that I really, really enjoy doing.
And how do you do that? Can you just give us an example of how you bridge those differences? Is it through the spirituality that you get them to understand, or is it just through generational things? How do you do that?
Yeah, so, it's not necessarily a spiritual approach that I take, though I would say that it's not disconnected in the approach that I take. It's predominantly around allowing individuals to go through exercises to recognize particular perceptions that they have, that they bring with them, that prevent individuals from feeling as if they are wanted, valued, and respected, whether that's executive leaders or whether that's entry-level individuals, and finding ways that we as individuals can begin to resolve these seeming unconscious perceptions or biases that may exist within us that create this barrier that produces some type of counterproductive behavior. And so it's very involved. I mean, at times it can be a keynote that I do with organizations. Obviously, right now, there are no keynotes, but right now it's predominantly virtual workshops that I do. So 2-hour workshops, and we go really in depth around the dimensions of diversity, which generations happens to be one of them. Age happens to be one of them. There's also race and ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identification. There's a variety of dimensions of diversity that exist between any two people. And how can we begin to internalize that in a way to build bridges instead of allowing those differences to create those barriers that I mentioned?
Right. And so you have your degree in accounting, you said, right?
I do, yeah.
Also,
So I do know how to crunch numbers.
right. So that's one of the things that you do. You help companies see where they're losing money as well, correct?
Well, yeah, probably the biggest money drainer from most organizations is turnover and also hiring the wrong person. And so how can we begin, and if there's a manager who people keep leaving, then how can we begin to find that? Yeah.
So that's where that falls into place. I see. So that's how they save money with less turnover. I get it. Okay. Did I read somewhere did you study with Michael Beckwith?
Well, Michael Beckwith gave me a very warm and glowing testimonial when I was on his radio show a few years back, and I chatted with him a handful of times, and he's just been a virtual mentor who I've had the opportunity to be a part of a few things that he's done over the years.
In case some of you who are watching don't know who Michael Beckwith is, he was part of The Secret, the movie, the documentary, The Secret. And so he's actually, is he still at Agape? I think
he is.
Santa Monica? Yep. Santa Monica. Okay. Yeah, he's great. And he's actually been in the center. I think I wasn't there, but I wish I was. So let me ask you, so if somebody's watching and they want to do something like what you're doing, okay, so you said you kind of got your start by reaching out to all the centers of spiritual living and asked to speak there. Is that what you did?
There was one particular pastor in Atlanta who gave me an opportunity to speak at the Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta in front of the 500 congregants. And the reception was so phenomenal. It brought this energy within me. And then I asked him if he would be willing to reach out to people, because I'm not anything. I don't have any credentials. And
right.
He said, okay. And it took me 6 months to get confidence to start reaching out to people. And once I did that, I haven't looked back.
Wait a minute. So he reached out, you asked him to reach out to people?
So I was at his center, similar to how you're at CSL Palm Desert. And he just said, we want to do a young service one time. Right. Would you be willing to speak? And I'm like, yeah, I would do poetry and open mic in college, but I would never speak. And so that was my first speaking opportunity. That was about 5 years ago.
Okay, and then after that, I thought you said you asked him to reach out to his people. Is that how it happened?
Well, I asked him if he knows any places that I could speak, and he said, just start reaching out to places. If they need me to vouch for you, I will.
Oh,
and it happened to be that his name preceded me at a handful of places, but I think it's really just his encouragement and his belief in me that was all that I needed.
You kind of had him in your back pocket if you needed it, it's like everybody, I think nobody wants to feel alone. They feel, that they've got some support. So that's amazing. So that obviously you knew that you were on the right path. So being a millennial yourself, you know, and I've got a 16-year-old. I mean, it's so different than when I was growing up and there's entrepreneurs like yourself, right? I mean, what words of advice, what are some pieces of advice you give somebody like 16, you know, to 25 years old, if, you know, if they haven't found their purpose? What would you say, what are a couple steps that they could take to find their purpose, and then, you know, and then go from there?
Yeah, that's a really powerful question. First, I think that it's important for you to spend just as much time looking within yourself as you do looking at one of these things, which I know my niece, who is 15, I try to get her off that phone sometimes. And so being willing to cultivate that inner sanctuary within yourself. It could be in
Okay,
nature.
Jeffon, I've got a 16-year-old. How do I do that? I mean, seriously, I know I'm throwing you a real curveball here, but seriously,
Okay.
it is like taking, I want to say drugs away, but it is. It's like it is.
I mean, it's addicting. Yeah.
And
So
when you say, so I take his phone, let's say I get his phone away, right? And
that probably won't go well.
Huh? It's not going to go well. I mean, let's say it's only for an hour or something. It's not going to go well. So I mean, exactly. So I don't want to use control over that. But you know, and then the second question is, go within. I mean, I've asked them to meditate with me. I think he meditated once with me. But you know, seriously, I mean, I think there's so many people that are watching this right now that are just, you know, up in arms because you know, when I was growing up and we had TV, I was allowed an hour of TV a night. That was it. Otherwise, I was outside with animals in nature. And that is meditation in itself, just being out in nature.
I agree.
Right? So my mom didn't have to say, go sit down and go within. That was my way of going within and connecting.
I agree.
So I don't know if you have the answer, and I don't want to put you on the spot too much.
So how about this? Because I know nature was huge on my end, and that's something that I can always take my niece and nephew. If I'm just like, yeah, I have this place, let's go check it out, and we just go and explore, and then I'm just sharing, you know, talking about a variety of things. Another thing that's been very helpful for myself in working with young kids is to be more interested than interesting. So really seek to have them share insights, ideas, what they're doing. My little nephew, who's 9, loves these games, and I will literally talk to him for an hour just about what his games are, what he's doing, how other people are playing that game. Is there ways that there are people who are making money off that game? Oh, there's people who do YouTube around this game. Is that something that you're interested in? If I taught you how to edit videos, would that be something that you're interested in? And then suddenly I start really engaging in an interested fashion. Yes. And it almost allows their guard to come down versus like, oh, here's this because now millennials kind of get looked at by Gen Z like, oh my gosh, or the alpha generation who is, you know, 11 and younger. They're like, you guys.
They're looking at my son is like, oh, they're like old farts.
Yeah. So perhaps just being more, you know, interested than interesting, and really seeking and finding out what brings them to life. If it's TikTok, then learning about that. If it's Instagram or taking these pictures, then learning about that and trying to really fuel their passion.
Right.
Particularly because there are so many, the barrier of entry is so low for people to enter into an entrepreneurial endeavor, whether it's taking photos or whether it's website management or building a variety of things, and just seeing if like how those pique their interest. And it seemed to be helpful for me, but I don't have kids. That's just from being the cool uncle, you know?
Yeah, exactly. You know, I actually found this entrepreneur camp for the whole week, where it's, you know, it's virtual, and they interact with other people, and they find something, they build it out. So I'm really excited to see how that goes. So you mentioned that you do work with younger people, right? So you do coaching. Let's talk about that. So you coach CEOs, you coach, you know, corporations, people, you know, employees and things like that. But do you do individual coaching? And tell us about that.
Yeah. So yes. So it kind of, when I first started speaking, it was solely with younger folks. So middle school, high school, and college level individuals. And I had some parents, say, my son heard you or my daughter heard you. Would you be willing to help them with this a little bit more? And so it started that way. But as I've continued to build my business, it's really been more so around adults who are going through a variety of things. I don't stand here and act as if I have all the answers, but I do have some very powerful processes that individuals can embrace to help them with business or help them with relationships with others, or most importantly with themselves. And it's been really fun, and it's something where I can connect with somebody more personal than if I'm doing a workshop or a larger session where I see somebody in passing or just for an hour or two based upon that particular training or seminar.
Do you have any workshops, virtual? Everything's virtual right now. So do you have any workshops coming up at this point?
So I do. However, they are all for organizations. We have been getting bombarded for a variety of organizations to do trainings around diversity and inclusion, particularly unconscious bias trainings for organizations. So that is what my next month is filled with. But I will be having some more public offerings here going forward.
And what's next up for you?
Yeah, so, my overall mission, I would love to inspire and empower 1 billion people to honor and recognize their inherent greatness. Now, if I miss that mark and only reach 100 or 1 million, or, even 100,000, or even, it's just incredible to be able to work and empower individuals, and really taking that understanding into the work that I do with organizations, realizing that it's like a ripple. It's like you never know the degrees in which that little interaction or those seeds will begin to blossom within the minds of somebody and impact the way that they talk to their kids or their neighbor or somebody that they see at the grocery store. And realizing that every opportunity or interaction that I have with another human is truly a blessing, because it has the ability to reach countless people who I may never meet. And
Absolutely.
so to cherish that.
And you know what? That's exactly why I do this show, because everybody on the show, most people are entrepreneurs, but everybody has been touched, so to speak. Like what we're talking about, I mean, this is why I'm passionate about doing this, because when you've been on one side and now you're on the other side, you just can't wait for other people to get it, right? I mean, because I would never want to live in that other world, because that other world I was existing. I'm actually living in this world. And it's still not easy. There's no magic pill. You still have to be consistent, and you have to work on yourself all the time. You always have to be moving forward. I mean, you can't just park yourself. I mean, people think, I got it now. No, right. Because the universe is always asking you to do more to become your best and highest self. So it just really never ends. But it's all your perspective, as you said. You can either look at, for example, I have to do this every day, or I get to do this every day. It's a shift in perspective is what it is. And, serving others, whenever I wake up and go, I don't want to, and I go, how can I best serve today? And I get out of my own way and I look at serving somebody else. And before I know it, I'm like in a great mood. It's when my thoughts are too much focused on myself, which is the ego. For me, that's when I know I'm going down a really slippery slope.
Yeah.
Because we all are interconnected, and I think everybody needs to understand that. So thank you so much for being here. I mean, we need your message so badly. And so your book's on Amazon, both of your books, right?
Yep.
And we're going to have all the information below. And for coaching, how does somebody get a hold of you? Through your website?
Yep, through my website. And again, if you just type in Jeffon Seely, if you can spell it right, you will find me.
And we're going to have that below in content. Okay. Any last takeaways that you want our viewers and audience to know?
Perhaps just a reminder to really slow down and be present, and recognize that every passing second is a gift and a blessing. You're standing on the shoulders of the people who have come before you. You're helping to pave the path for those individuals who will come after you, and be willing to honor and cherish those thoughts and choices and actions. They're the three 3 paintbrushes, I said 4, counting emotions, that you use to color the canvas called your reality. And you can color it any way that you choose. We are all exceptional. We're extraordinary. We have incredible potential. And there are people who are waiting for you to just simply be the person who you're here to be.
Simply be you, exactly, because there's no other person out there like you. And I think we all need to understand that we are so special in our own way, and everybody's waiting for us to bring our gifts forth, right?
Totally agree.
Okay. Well, I loved having you on, and I'm sure that we'll see you again.
Thank you so much, Tina.
All right. So if you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do so. It's Tina Marx TV. And my website is Transparent with Tina. And you can also get me on my podcast, which is on just about every podcast there is. So we'll see you next time. Thank you.